Hereby I open this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. My name is Ton de Goey. I am the Prorector of the ceremony and the Chair of the Degree Committee. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Golnaz Atefi, and she will defend in public her thesis, which is entitled Enhancing Social Health in Dementia Care, Insights from Acceptance and Commitment Therapy and Technology Use. Welcome all members of the Degree Committee, in particular the 4 supervisors sitting in front of me. Professor Marjolein de Vught, she is Professor of Psychosocial Innovations in Dementia. Professor Frans Verheij, he is Professor of Neuropsychiatry and Old Age Psychiatry at both from Maastricht University. The 3rd supervisor is Dr. Rosalie van Knippenberg, and she is postdoc in psychology. And the 4th supervisor is Dr. Sarah Bartels, and she is postdoc in neuropsychology. Welcome all the audience here in the aula, and I welcome also the viewers of the live stream. I will introduce the 5 opponents later during the ceremony, because when I mention all those names, you will certainly forget, so I do that later. Mrs. Atefi, may I invite you to give a summary of your thesis? And I wish you success in the coming hour. The floor is yours. Please switch on your microphone.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Dear Prorector, dear audience, what makes life worth living when you're constantly pulling it together? This was a quote of Shirin, a family caregiver who once told me. Shirin is taking care of her husband who has dementia for years now. Let's reflect on her quote through my thesis findings. Family care has long been the role of family members. Providing care and support for someone we love and care about can be quite fulfilling and rewarding experience. However, if caregiving tasks outweigh the capacity of family caregivers to provide it, it can put their mental well-being at risk. So why in the whole trajectory of dementia care and the whole concept of care and research one would bother studying family caregivers? Well, the prevalence of dementia. Due to aging population and lack of cure for dementia, the number of people who are affected by dementia is constantly rising. It costs governments billions every year. And due to shortage of healthcare professionals and preference of people with dementia to stay in community for as long as possible and feasible, there is additional burden and responsibility on family caregivers. Now we see how strategic is the move of family caregivers. If their function or malfunction can significantly contribute to quality of care and quality of life of people with dementia, the total care cost, the formal care cost, timing of admission of people with dementia to nursing homes, and whether or not their own well-being will be additional burden for healthcare system. So how can we support the function of family caregivers when there is no cure for dementia? This is where the concept of social health comes in place. Social health is a broader definition of health, which is not only about biological aspect of the diseases, but also social functioning, despite limitations. And in this context, limitations that dementia can cause. Social health has 3 main domains: having necessary social contact, engaging in meaningful activities, activities that perceived meaningful for individuals themselves, and managing daily life with some sort of independence. Addressing social health has shown to be effective and promising for many areas, many populations, but hasn't been studied yet fully well in the context of family care. Especially after COVID and digitalization of dementia care, we witness how technology can facilitate many family caregivers to be socially more healthy and socially connected. At the same time, we also witness how technology can pose additional challenges for some family caregivers, making them even more isolated and disconnected. Now we knew that family caregivers are an important population to study. Social health is a promising area to address, and potential and challenges of technology surrounding it. We were convinced to conduct some studies addressing social health in dementia care. We specifically wanted to answer two questions. How can we support functioning of family caregivers of people with dementia? And what is the role of technology in this context? In order to addressing functioning of family caregivers, we chose acceptance and commitment therapy. Acceptance and commitment therapy, which from now on I call it ACT, is a behavioral therapy approach. It upskills individuals in three main domains. It supports them to learn skills in three main areas: to be open to thoughts and feelings, so not to suppress them, not to change them, but allow them to come and go. It also supports individuals to stay at the present moment, to be aware of the present moment, not to drown in the past, not to drown in the future. It also teaches individuals to identify their life values and how to engage with those values in order to live a more meaningful and less distressing life. All these three concepts of being open, aware, and engaged with life value form the concept of psychological flexibility, which is the foundation of ACT. According to ACT, psychological flexibility is key to human functioning. So, what is its implication for family caregivers? This was our first research question. We conducted a review. We reviewed scientific databases to identify any research that has been done anywhere in the world in this topic. Out of 7,896 studies, 21 were relevant to our research question, that whether and if, how ACT can support functioning of family caregivers. One thing that attracted our attention was how heterogeneous the population of family caregivers can be. One can take care of a spouse who's already retired. One can take care of a spouse who has young onset dementia and small children to take care of as well. One can take care of parents with dementia or siblings. And these are quite different contexts of caregiving and dynamic contexts of caregiving. Yet, ACT appeared to be feasible and flexibly delivered in different contexts of family caregiving, addressing diverse needs. In fact, family caregivers who learned ACT skills show less depressive symptoms, less anxiety, less stress. They were better able to experience more positive aspects of caregiving and having more sense of competence. In terms of social health, it supported family caregivers to manage their daily life with more independence. However, only half of these studies were about family caregivers, specifically family caregivers of people with dementia, and very limited involved online or digital tools. So we took the lesson learned to set up a fully online ACT intervention for 30 family caregivers here in the Netherlands. We delivered 9-week ACT interventions for family caregivers to follow, watching videos, learning ACT skills, incorporating motivational coach. And part of the result was similar. ACT appeared to be feasible. Family caregivers, through quantitative and qualitative findings, sharing stories, reported that it was easier for them to balance caregiving with other responsibilities. In terms of social health, they were better able to engage with meaningful activities. And results showed that ACT in this context could be potentially effective, but that is something for future to test. Something that came up, however, more frequently for family caregivers was, although they learned ACT skills and they had the mindset, the new mindset, it was sometimes difficult to use ACT skills in impulsive, stressful situations, something that they weren't really prepared for or expected to come over. And in those moments, family caregivers found it kind of struggle to do that. But is it a shared challenge across family care, that what is the implication of these impulsive stressors for family caregivers' mental well-being? This was the focus of our next study. This time we looked into 40 family caregivers. We wanted to sample their experience, their feeling, their thoughts, their behavior. We wanted to learn the context of family caregivers. We asked the same set of questions 10 times a day over 6 weeks. How do they feel, what they're doing, in what context, with whom? And results showed that stressful situation and stress is shared across all family caregivers, as it is a normal feeling for human beings to have. However, what was game changer was the response to those stressors. If family caregivers experienced a stressful situation as unpredictable and uncontrollable, they tended to be less engaged in meaningful activities, having less social interaction, experiencing more depressive symptoms, more anxiety, more stress. Conversely, when stressful situation was in control and predictable, they tended to experience more positive aspect of caregiving, more sense of competence. And this was interesting because when you think about it, it can create a paradoxical situation because dementia is a neurodegenerative condition. It can worsen over time and can potentially pose challenges that can be perceived unpredictable, uncontrollable, for example, symptom for a person with dementia. Does it mean that family caregivers in later stages of caregiving actually are less able or willing to reach out for help or use help? This was the focus of our next study. This time we conducted another review. Out of 446 studies, 18 studies were relevant. We wanted to see what are those factors that influence family caregivers' adherence to online support. Not surprisingly, we found that the majority of participants in these studies are actually at earlier stages of family caregiving. They were mainly based in Western context, were highly educated, and taking care of person with Alzheimer's. However, in this more homogeneous population of family caregivers, 1 in 5 family caregivers tended to leave in interventions before they even finished. Why they left the intervention? The main reason is unknown. The second main reason, though, is unsuitable content. Family caregivers just said, yeah, sorry, this is not for me, and they left before the interventions are even finished. However, we found that when interventions incorporating some sort of human contact, some sort of personalization, interaction, it influenced family caregivers' willingness and ability to stay in online interventions until they're finished. So apparently technology is promising for some family caregivers in some ways. How can we improve its scalability and usability for more people, not only for family caregivers, but also people with dementia? This was our next research question. We went to stakeholders. We conducted another review. We wanted to see if technology can also address outcome measures for people with dementia, say loneliness, social isolation. And we found that willingness and ability of people with dementia or family caregivers to stay engaged with online intervention is only one factor. There are tons of other factors. It's also about the content of the intervention and if they are culturally adapted and usable. It depends on what organization actually implementing it. Is it a hospital or university? If there are enough staff to train, to deliver those interventions to the target population. It depends on the infrastructure, if there is adequate funding, who owns the intellectual property. So, what makes life worth living? For Shireen or any family caregiver around the world, there are some personal factors that they can work on to be more open, aware, and engaged to their life values, to improve their psychological flexibility. However, it also depends in what social context they live, if the social support they want and need is provided. It also depends on their health status. For example, if Shireen has any chronic condition, also the type and stage of dementia of the care recipient. say that she wants to go and receive formal support, then it's really important in what environment she lives. Is the support she needs provided? Is it tailored? Is it personalized? I would like to give the word back to Prorector. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your clear summary of your thesis. The opposition will be opened by the chair of the Thesis Assessment Committee, Professor Sebastian Köhler. He is Professor of Neuroepidemiology at Maastricht University. Professor Köhler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prorector. Dear candidate, first of all, I would like to congratulate you on your beautiful dissertation and also compliments, of course, to your supervision team. It's really a very beautiful book. You also get the compliments from my youngest boy for the cover he really liked. And I especially like the quotes of people that you met during your PhD journey of the past years a lot. It also shows that you've been highly productive with 9 scientific chapters published or going to be published soon, which shows, I guess, your dedication and also your ambition to really make an impact, a scientific impact, but also a societal impact, because you also were very active, of course, with all kind of outreach activities for the Alzheimer's Center, and your skating journey, which you're in fact the first world record holder I came to know. I know a world champion in sports, but not a world record holder, so also compliments to that. And this brings me to a question, because as you, I guess I can call you an activist for people living with dementia and caregivers. And I wonder whether this role also comes with challenges for the scientist in you in combining these two roles, because as an activist, of course, you're very dedicated to your topic and to the people you want to help, whereas as a scientist you have to be neutral and independent. So I would like to learn from you, how do you balance this in your personal career?
Highly esteemed proponent, thank you so much for the compliment, your kind words, and the question. I think, for example, in research, we know that some population might not be really representative, let's say minority ethnic groups. So I found it really beautiful when going to them and hearing their stories. However, I received lots of comments that sometimes people didn't want their photo to be shared, like their quotes to be shared as well. So I think there is a kind of trust that can still be worked out. I assume that your question is how to balance being active advocating for example, people with dementia or family caregivers, and being a researcher and being neutral, right?
Yes, and to protect yourself, for instance, from trying to find something in a study that might help people, but keeping neutrality. So, for instance, confirmation bias, so that we're all prone to as researchers because we really want to make progress and want to find something, which is a challenge. And I guess if you're already also committing your name to activities in that place, it might become even harder to protect yourself from this. So, and keeping neutrality with regard to your findings also.
Yeah, I see your point, but I don't think that it's always bad to be biased in some ways, for example, because we know, for example, stigma is higher in some population with some, let's say, socioeconomic statuses. It's not always about, ethnicity. So it's good for a researcher to know that. So you're mindful when you want to recruit. So you don't want to recruit like 100 people, for example, with same characteristics. It's good for you to know so that you can approach to those people, so that you can, Am I answering your question now?
Yes, excellent. And maybe add that it's important to have a team of people surrounding you, and not as an activist you're very much on your own fighting, but in science we work in teams, and it's good to give mandate to people around you to correct you and point to blind spots maybe. And so talking about blind spots, I also had some maybe while reading your thesis, and this. So let's discuss more on that part on your thesis, because I read everything, but I especially was interested in chapter 10, where you discuss interviews that have been held with stakeholders to look into what they think, how leisure activities can be implemented in care homes to foster social interactions, non-digital leisure activities, as you call them. And I was very puzzled to read that privacy concerns might be a barrier to implementation of these non-digital leisure activities in nursing homes. So that this was a topic that was discussed. So maybe you can help me. What kind of privacy concern might emerge when we offer board games to people in nursing homes?
So this, I think, is you're addressing the secondary analysis. Well, it was when we conducted 2 studies based on the same data. We went to stakeholders asking them, what's the implication for online tools, but also offline. So in terms of offline, we came up with a solution that blended care could be an option for addressing, leisure activities. And when you want to combine these two, for example, sending notification via online application or something, I think that was the theme of privacy that came, for example, because. And I think now I'm thinking of the board games. I think it was about. Maybe I can take a look. That having offline tools, like privacy concerns, are not really raised when we have implementing offline tools. But when we blend it with online tools, then there might be some concerns.
Yeah.
I think, but.
Yeah, if I understood correctly, they didn't really say they are a concern, but it was they even said this is a positive aspect of offline activities, that there are not so much privacy issues compared to digital solutions. But just the fact that it was discussed at all puzzled me, because I would think this is very easy to implement and not even discuss privacy issues in that. But it makes sense, and if you offer it as a blended intervention, though. But might this also then be an example of the problem inherited to that study, because you discuss non-digital leisure activities, which is a strange term, I think, when you discuss board games. But as you say, the people that were selected for the interviews, they were quite tech-savvy people, and they were selected based on that. And this might have biased, as you discuss, the answers of the people, and then maybe even they considered non-digital activities secondary only, compared to digital solutions. However, I wonder, is this only a problem with the selection of these people, or is this not very inherent to the study itself, because it was just a secondary research question? So weren't people actually quite prompted to consider them also secondary and only adjunct to non-digital solutions?
You may give a short answer, please.
Yeah, just to make sure that I understood the question correctly, is that why people we interviewed did mention privacy for implementing offline tools, right?
This is not about privacy anymore, but because just the answers that they gave, were they really satisfying your research question, because you selected people that were working from a tech background to answer questions about non-tech activities, but the whole study was set up to question about technical solutions. So is this study sufficient to answer your research question?
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, short answer, no. But I think, no, because specifically for people from industry, it's always financial matters attached to it if they want to, like, something can be implemented in real world. So yeah, I think it could be quite biased, specifically because we also interviewed people in different contexts, like in the UK and the Netherlands. And in the UK, you have care coordinators that they decide if a non-digital leisure activities, we, by the way, put this name because we didn't want to, like, be specific about board games, but anything in general. So it really depends on their decision if they implement it in nursing homes or not. However, it could be different in the context of the Netherlands. So definitely, this was just the initial step. Maybe in the future, in the same context, with more thorough interviewing and first-hand, data, could be a better way to go.
Thank you very much, and I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you, Professor Köhler. The next opponent is Professor Rosemarie Dreus. She is a professor of psychosocial care in Dementia at the Free University and affiliated with the Amsterdam University Medical Center. Professor Dreus.
Thank you. Dear candidate, dear Mrs. Atefi, first of all, I would like to congratulate you, of course, with your thesis, which I've read with great interest. It looks great. And I've read it with pleasure because it's clearly written, the study subject is original, the research is comprehensive, very comprehensive. It's of good scientific quality. And you were successful in publishing almost all your research in peer-reviewed journals. If I counted well, 8 papers are already published and 1 is under review. So that's really incredible. Of course, I would also like to congratulate your supervisors because it's really an impressive result, I must say. So the thesis consists of 2 parts, and I'd like to ask you a question about chapter 5 and 6, several questions, smaller questions. First of all, about chapter 5. So that's about the preliminary efficacy of the online intervention. And in this chapter, you report on the pre-post study with 2 follow-up assessments you conducted with 30 caregivers. And this was into the preliminary efficacy of the online ACT intervention on caregivers' well-being and ACT process, so the acceptance and commitment therapy processes. You found clinically significant positive effects on depressive symptoms, stress and anxiety, and also the sense of competence of caregivers was increased. And these are very interesting and useful outcomes. Regarding the ACT processes, so the underlying hypothesized mechanisms of change, you found improvements in psychological flexibility, so the way caregivers were able to cope with their negative emotions, inflexibility, and engaged living, so the actions they have undertaken in alignment with their values. However, unexpectedly, you did not find any change in valued living. So the way caregivers evaluate the most significant aspects of their current life stage. Your explanation for this is that it is difficult for older adults to live according to their core values because of the challenges they experience at old age. This sounds rather hopeless, especially when these challenges cannot be solved. But is the explanation correct? Your intention was, if I understood this well, to evaluate significant aspects of the current life stage and not the previous life stage. So one would expect that these life areas are valued relative to their current situation and abilities, and that improvement is still possible. So my first question is, do you have doubts about the validity of the data you collected? In other words, that carers tended to value significant aspects of previous life stages instead of their current life stage? Or do you think that core values don't change and remain as important to people in old age as in previous life stages, but then generally tend to become less fulfilled? In that last case, I don't understand why you would expect improvements by ACT. Do you understand what I mean?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you so much for the very kind words and interesting questions. I think I understood at least some part of it, and so maybe I can start with that. Regarding the valued living, there are some reasons why we didn't find very significant results, I think. Indeed, one part of it could be old age. According to literature and theory, those people who have, for example, they work as part of their identity when they go to retirement, because they have, some people might have the feeling, the feeling of valued or part of their identity through work. So if they're going to retirement and they either not willing or able to do the work they used to do, it can cause some sort of, challenges in that sense. So in this case, yes, maybe some family caregivers were in transition, or because it takes time, because it's a different stage of life. So this could be something. But also, I think for valued living and in terms of caregiving, one thing that we came up during the discussion for future is that maybe next time we can choose two values for family caregivers, one caregiving and one personal value, because many people just define the value in the context of caregiving. So and caregiving, it can be unstable because it really depends on the status of the person with dementia. Maybe that changes, and if your value is just bound to caregiving, maybe that also changes. And it could also be intervention effect, that some people became more mindful and they realized that, oh, okay, maybe this area maybe this is an area that I want to develop in terms of value. So there are lots of reasons, I think, that we either could have or we can control for future to see what was actual reason for it.
Okay, thank you. Then my second question about the same subject is, considering the positive outcomes of ACT on caregivers' well-being without any change in valued living, do we have to conclude that the concept of valued living, or at least the way it was measured in your study, is not relevant to achieving improvements in caregivers' well-being, but rather the actual engagement in activities, which showed significant improvement? In that case, however, I don't understand why you recommend future research to emphasize additional value training.
Thank you. This is an excellent point, I think, because it's not only about engaging in activities, it's also about engaging in what activities, So values support individuals it gives direction to those activities. So if someone is let's say, engaged in social activities and their values are in line, then they probably are going to experience more, positive experience. So I think it is indeed valid for future to do, first of all, a value training, because it can also be difficult. We always ask, for example, teenagers what you want to do or want to be in future, but when someone is at older age, we don't usually ask what you want to be or what you want to, maybe we should ask though, to realize, first of all, we can connect it to the history of life of the person. So if someone has been, let's say, a basketball player for lifelong, now maybe they can be a coach or they can stay engaged with that value, but it's like a directive of being, sportive. So yeah, I believe because it also has a theoretical explanation that valued and actions are bound together in terms of according to ACT.
So would it be an idea to integrate those two concepts?
Yeah,
because you want meaningful activities for the person.
Indeed, these two are actually same topic according to ACT, which they call it engaged. But this is also a limitation of ACT, that we can't really measure, single processes. We just know they work and they should work. But because it's also a kind of new area, only 30 or 35 years ago it has been developed. So there are some work still to do to really put weight on all those processes and validate instruments for that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'm happy with your answer.
Great.
So do I have still a minute or not? Oh,
no.
I'm
Time
sorry.
is up.
I had such a nice question for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dreus. The next opponent is Professor Kutz. He is Professor of Behavior, Change and Technology at Maastricht University. Professor Kutz.
Thank you very much. Well, dear candidate, also my congratulations on your thesis. I almost want to use the plural here because it's so much work. It could cover almost 2 theses. And also I think in terms of topics, you cover both ACT and technology use, all under the umbrella of enhancing social health and dementia care. So I think that's an important study area where you really contributed a lot. So my compliments for that. And while my research are mainly focused on the second aspect, the second topic you addressed, I would like to start my questions with the first topic. And I want to continue where my colleague ended, also focusing on chapter 6. And there you did a very interesting experience sampling study. And you focus on understanding these daily stressors of caregivers. Nicely conducted studies. But when I jump to the conclusion, I think the first sentence you write there, at least in the abstract conclusion, is that uncontrollable and unpredictable events seem to significantly impact some mental health well-being outcomes of dementia caregivers. And you also show that on the slide with the scale thingy. So it's about these uncontrollable and unpredictable events. Now, that seems logical to me, but then my question would be, what would that imply in practice? How do we deal with this?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you so much for the compliment and interesting question. Well, there are a lot we can do, I think, in practice. In terms of predictability and controllability, these two are human beings' desire to have control over stuff. And this, for example, in terms of dementia, that it's not controllable and sometimes symptoms are not predictable, so it's kind of contradictory, which can be, I think, linked to ACT because according to ACT, this uncontrollability and unpredictability, let's say uncertainty, is also a normal part of human beings' life. So, a concept of ACT is creative hopelessness. Mm-hmm. So in that, it means that first of all, accept that it's uncertain situation. So accepting it is like a huge step. So how do we do that in practice? We first of all can provide information, because lack of information is one of the most unmet needs of family caregivers of people with dementia. So maybe if they know, it's easier for them to be certain about being uncertain. So that is one thing, I think, providing information. In terms of like how do we address, for example, let go of control, we can, well, if someone feels uncertain about something, they can still feel that. But at the same time, according to ACT, they'd better still engage with their values. So I feel that this is uncontrollable and I feel frustrated, but I am still presenting my findings because of my value of sharing knowledge with others. So I feel uncertain and still engage with my value at the same time. So this is something that I think family caregivers can also be trained in practice.
Yeah, so there's on the one hand you're saying like it's about acceptance of that you don't always have control. That was what I was expecting. And the other part then is there is some preparation in there.
Indeed. So unpredictability and uncontrollability are separate concepts, but they are still, have indications for each other. So one thing, like if I want to have an example for a clinician, is that, so I don't know when this symptoms is coming up, and I don't know what it is in the future, but whatever it is, I will be prepared. So also our results show that unpredictability is perceived more negative than uncontrollability. So being uncertain is really having some sort of implication for people. So yeah, I think training to let go of control, or training to be prepared for whatever happens could be.
Yeah, because when I was reading that, I was thinking more about the other things. So to draw a parallel, for example, I've done some work on infectious disease. And after COVID-19, this whole field for professionals in infectious disease is all about pandemic preparedness.
Yeah.
So they don't know what the next pandemic will be, but they're pretty sure there will be a pandemic and how should we react. This is for public health professionals. And I see some parallels with what you were saying, actually, because basically you're saying these informal caregivers, something will come your way, we don't know what, but you have to deal with it. And then say, okay, we're going to train them, but what do we train them with? So one part is the acceptance, but what do you train them how to deal with whatever comes their way?
Yeah, that is why we personalize our intervention somehow, to see what is it that, what is people's value in life. Because if you are engaged with your life value according to ACT, you're better able to cope with those uncertainty. So we ask people what are their life values. So essentially life values are shared across human beings, and the priority can change over time. For example, for me, like right now, if family is priority and work is like second priority, maybe in a year or maybe in a week will be work and then family. So it depends on people's value, what is their value in life, and then setting goals based on that. So goal-oriented action toward life value while still coping with those uncertainty, I think, according to ACT at least.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Then I want to shift to a completely different topic. That's chapter 7, where you talk about e-health adherence.
Yeah.
Actually, my PhD thesis was about that topic, so I was really interested to see that people are still busy with this. And then I was triggered by the word dropout. And this is a quite nerdy question, but how did you calculate, how did you conceptualize dropout? What was dropout in your studies?
Thank you. So we define dropout based on each author's definition of dropout, because for example, an author might define dropout from reported dropout from intervention or study or after follow-up. We sometimes weren't able to see have a same definition of dropout and see if people did it, because sometimes they just reported dropout number. So I think we just use dropout definition or dropout per paper, per author's definition, which could be one of the limitations of our study, that we couldn't standardize or use the same.
Yeah, I'm interpreting the body language of the prorector. My time is up, but just one very short. Is it then, so these studies were both study dropout and intervention dropout combined then?
No,
to be a little bit short.
Only intervention dropout.
Thanks, that helps.
Thank you, Professor Kutz. The next opponent is Dr. Lizzie Boots. She is assistant professor in e-health and caregiving at Maastricht University. Dr. Boots.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, congratulations on your amazing achievement. It was a pleasure to read your impressive bookwork on supporting caregivers of people with dementia through ACT and technology, but while also focusing on innovation in non-technological tools in dementia care. And I especially appreciated the added focus on implementation in care practice and these innovative measurement tools, which are very helpful for future researchers. But of course, unfortunately, I'm not only here to give compliments, I also would like to exchange some ideas with you on your findings. And in part 1, you focus on a digital ACT tool for caregivers of people with dementia by improving psychological flexibility. And the results you found were very impressive, I thought. And I was very interested what you think the role of the coach was in this intervention. Because you mentioned in chapter 5 that the coach has a significant role in enhancing the adherence to the intervention, but also the motivation and the confidence in technology. And ideally, the coach should only motivate the caregiver to follow the intervention, but you mentioned that there is more to this coaching role. In chapter 4, you mentioned that participants received more in-depth coaching, and that the role of the coach was also one of the most highly esteemed parts of the intervention. So, my question is, what do you think the impact of the role of the coach was on your results?
Esteemed opponent, thank you so much for the kind compliment, an interesting question. Short answer, a lot. I think, yeah, well, we wanted this self-help intervention to have minimal contact. So we wanted a motivational coach to motivate people, stay engaged with the intervention, not adding additional therapeutic, dimension to it. However, it might have. So this is a limitation of our study that, we didn't actually measure it, but we found that for some family caregivers, they needed more time. So initially, we wanted coaching to be 20 minutes for everybody, but some needed more time. So yeah, I think coaching. And also, speaking of implementation that you mentioned, I think, well, we had a very dedicated motivational coach, very flexible, very available, which is not maybe fully representative of how coaching is in real world. So, yeah, I think maybe then for future, one thing that we can do is first of all see if it's a human contact, or implementing, for example, comparing human contact and automated, for example, personalized feedback, like with AI, and see what's the difference. Then we can see if it's if it's a human contact or it's a coach or how's the effect. I think. So yeah, in general, I think coaching was a valuable component of our intervention as we wanted it to be.
You already answered my second question about about what we can give future researchers as advice, but you already mentioned that, so that's very interesting. And you already also talked about my next question, so it was an all-in-one answer. But I still want to discuss it with you if I have a minute. Yeah, because you mentioned that it was a blended format, which I highly appreciate because Partner in Balance was also, as you know, a blended program. But it also poses some challenges for further scalability of the intervention. So I was thinking about your thoughts on future implementation of this intervention, and is it already ready to implement on a wider scale, or should you maybe adapt something to make it easier to scale up?
That's a really good question. You mean if we can or should implement ACT in practice?
As it is now, how you studied it.
I think we need to test it in larger, population of people, maybe effectiveness RCDs first, as I assume was the same for Partner in Balance. So yeah, I think because it was only a feasibility study, there would be, it would be nice to add some extra measure to see how things working, especially for acceptance aspect. We used AAQ2 to measure acceptance, which is not really, there is a discussion in the literature that is not really measuring acceptance, and it's about anxiety. So maybe we can work around the measures a little bit. But speaking of how we can bring it to practice, for example, in the Netherlands, we have, there are regional differences. For example, in Maastricht, if you want to, if you have a diagnosis of dementia, let's say, family caregivers can have some follow-up with a neuropsychologist. So if the result, let's say we have a good effectiveness study of good results and we want to implement it, then I think it's good to discuss it, disseminate it with the region we want to implement it. And then talk about the results and how it can be implemented. We should also be mindful that ACT can be a bit abstract, so it needs to be in lay language and easy to understand, or be implemented for caregivers with higher educational level. So be more personalized, I think.
So because ACT is also maybe a bit abstract, I think I hear you saying that you should keep the blended formats, someone who helps them through it, and maybe only give it to people that are highly educated. Is that what you're saying?
I think it depends on actually what we want. If we want it to be easy to use, like cost-effective, only self-help, yeah, of course, we can do it like iSupport, which is something that World Health Organization has. So that could be like only informative for people. So then it can be for people with higher education. But if we want it to be personalized, addressing more needs in depth, but for a smaller population of people, then we can, really think how we can personalize it for, smaller population in smaller region, I think.
Okay, thank you. Just, do I have time for a very small question? Okay. Well, adapting to a chronic condition is important for not only the caregiver, but of course also for the person with dementia itself. So I understood that you were thinking about maybe a follow-up for this intervention to be made available for also the dyad. And what do you think that should be changed to the intervention to fit the needs of both people with dementia and their caregivers?
Thank you. I think this is a really interesting point and important way for future research, because so far we don't have studies that addressing interpersonal relationships, which is one of the most affected area in dementia with caregivers and person with dementia. So it really depends on subtypes of family caregivers. If they're couples, if they're, for example, if they're parents and adult child, so then we can target the interpersonal aspects through ACT. So maybe compassion-based or narrative therapy, maybe reminiscence therapy. So then in that sense, we can use shared values of couples, let's say traveling or something, and then use that value-based, for example, photos or whatever memory it is, and then take it from there to be more engaged, to work on the relationship between person with dementia and family caregivers.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer, and I gladly return the word to the co-rector.
Thank you, Dr. Boots. The fifth and last opponent is Dr. Michaela Schok. She is lecturer in psychology at Utrecht University. Dr. Schok.
Thank you very much, dear candidate. I want to really congratulate you with an amazing dissertation, as already said, and also the supervising team. I was very impressed with the studies, focusing on the family caregivers of people with dementia. And this is a growing population, of course, as you already mentioned, nowadays in society. And I think they need a lot of recognition and support, as they do a hell of a job, I think. And they take care of a loved one with severe and increasing memory loss. And with this journey, they face a lot of stressors and demands as a caregiver, but also the living loss of a loved one. So I can relate to this situation as well, because I'm one of them. And therefore, I have read your dissertation with very much interest from a personal but also a scientific perspective. And I had a question for you for chapter 6. I was very interested in that part. And this chapter addresses chronic stress in caregivers and possible maladaptive responses. More specifically, the study focuses on appraisal and emotional and behavioral responses using experiencing sampling method over 6 weeks and 3 consecutive days. And then you also measured 10 times a day, yeah, you said. And I was wondering why this time frame and why only 3 consecutive days you measured that. Because in my experiences, this not only is 3 days a week, for example, that you experience stress, it's the whole week. So can you reflect on that?
Esteemed opponent, thank you so much for the compliment. An interesting question. I think, first of all, this chapter that you're mentioning was secondary analysis of existing data sets. So we didn't have really saying of changing the setup of the intervention or data because it was already existing from years ago. So I assume this study was set up in consultation. Well, I mean, I know that this was set up with a consultation with a team, with statistician, and I assume that they wanted to sample the experience. Maybe maybe it was not feasible, or it was advised to do it only in that time frame. But I'm sure there must have been explanation of that, but it wasn't, raised during my studies because it was already existing, I'm afraid.
Okay, good. Then I have, of course, another question, if that is okay. I was wondering that the measure of situational appraisal did not include the actual stressor. Is that correct? Did you ask also for the stressors, the objective stressors?
Thank you. This is a really, good direction maybe for future because it was a secondary analysis, we were very limited to, properly design items of the question. No, short answer. We actually asked about the context, that what are you doing, with whom, do you feel stress? But maybe in future, as we also mentioned in the direction for future, it will be helpful to know what are those stressors, if it's, for example, dementia related, if it's not, or what is causing those stress, then it allow for more personalized approach moving forward, I think. But short answer, no. In this existing data set, it wasn't available.
And maybe also do some qualitative research on these stressors, for example, and maybe look at caregivers who can navigate stress versus the ones who have difficulty with navigating this stress, or maybe have psychopathology or sort of. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we can indeed. We can also see who completes this intervention, who is not completing, and what are those reasons. But I'm not sure if we can really incorporate qualitative, reflection in the moment, because one thing we can do is that asking people that how do they feel, but if implementing qualitative aspects like 10 times a day, especially if there's a stressful situation, maybe people it might be a bit challenging to fill out like a qualitative response to that. But what we can do is implementing or using in the moment intervention. So people say that they feel stress or this is uncontrollable, and then something come up, and then show a short video or a text or what to do, or take a deep breath, or what is it. So with some examples, which has shown to be really effective, but for school children or with college student, but has been yet studied, at least in family care area, I think.
Okay, thank you. Is there time for another question? Okay. I have another one, and it's about the relationship of the caregiver to the person with dementia. And I think the quality of that relationship is very important, especially. And it's also a process and changing relationship. And I think also caregivers are faced with coming to terms with loss and grief in this relationship. And why is that not included? I saw that you had in the discussion, you mentioned it. Why is it not included, and why? What are your thoughts about that?
Thank you. I think we discussed it a little bit in the introduction, that it was, maybe because we had spousal caregivers in the first place, so we narrowed it down already. It wasn't like caregivers with different dynamics or relationship with a person with dementia. And we discussed that, because as you mentioned, there is a need for, addressing subtypes of family caregivers, and we chose like spousal caregivers. So that was narrowed down a little bit in advance. But yeah, I think it is really important what is the dynamic and what is the relationship of person with dementia and family caregivers throughout. Because the dynamic is also quite different. If someone has to take care of a husband with young onset dementia and also doing childcare, this is just quite a different dimension, I think. So.
Okay.
Mrs. Atefi, you have heard and seen that the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And I ask you to remain here until we return with our results.
Please all rise.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Get the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Mrs. Atefi. The committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and in particular the quality of your defense. And in view of this positive verdict and also taking into account your previous qualifications, the committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. And Professor De Vrucht is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom and law. I invite your supervisor now to take the floor. Professor van Vught.
Please all rise.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Golnaz Atefi, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with a degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university. Wel edel, zeer geleerde Dr. Atefi, dear Golnaz. It is done. You are now a doctor. And not just any doctor, but one who throughout her PhD has surprised me again and again. In fact, that might be the red thread that runs through this entire journey. Your exceptional ability to surprise, to innovate, to go beyond what was expected or what we even imagined. When you first joined us, I knew we had selected an interesting candidate. And indeed, we got not only a candidate, we got creativity, drive, curiosity, and a very determined spirit. It became clear very early on that you are not someone who simply follows the path laid out for her. You redraw the map entirely. Your creativity showed itself in all kinds of ways. I think many colleagues here will know that you can create beautiful little artworks that you gave some of us as a personal gift. But your artistry didn't stop at the canvas. You brought it also into your science. You designed your own Rolling for Dementia campaign, complete with logo, colors, media strategy. I think this was also a collaboration with your sister, wasn't it? And then it ended up on the front cover of your thesis, and rightly so. But let me be clear, this thesis is not just a visual work of art, it's an intellectual one too. In fact, your work evolved far beyond the original research plan. You didn't simply tick off deliverables. You came up with new questions, explored new angles, and brought up new project ideas, brought up new project ideas, brought up new project ideas. So many ideas. Actually, that I told you several times with mild despair, Golnaz, this is just not feasible. But then I learned something important. Never underestimate Golnaz. And this way, you brought your own ideas to life. You threw yourself into every project with energy and conviction. And look at the result, an exceptionally rich dissertation with a record number of chapters, all of which are already published in top journals. Honestly, I think you've not only broken a record with your skating tour, but also in output for your thesis. Golnaz, you were right all along. When I addressed my concerns in year 3 that there were no publications submitted yet, you said to me, "Don't worry, it will all be fine." And well, it's not just fine, Golnaz, it turned out extraordinary. I was also surprised to read in your acknowledgements that you once aspired a career as a professional athlete. Suddenly, so much clicked into place for me. That relentless drive, the discipline, the boldness to take on physical and mental challenges alike. It's no coincidence, I suppose, that you were the only PhD student I've ever known to arrive at an Alzheimer's Europe conference on skates. Let me paint that picture again, just because it deserves repeating. You were having skates across a huge distance as part of your Rolling for Dementia campaign, greeted with cheers by your colleagues as you rolled into the conference center. And then you did it again, this time skating all across the Netherlands to visit nearly every prominent dementia researcher in the country. And some of their reflections made it into the thesis book. All of them were inspired and also inspired you. That combination of physical stamina, social engagement, and intellect makes you a truly unique researcher. You didn't just stay behind your desk, you went out into the world, even despite of a long time that we were very limited by COVID. You created new collaborations, you traveled to Spain, to Scandinavia, the UK, and you reached out to the US to build bridges and to co-create knowledge. And I want to highlight, you did that with fellowships you secured yourself. No one handed you a ticket. You applied, wrote proposals, and made things happen. In that sense, your journey could be the poster child for what the Marie Curie International Training Network program is all about: mobility, initiative, and contributing to research through collaboration. I'm sure the EU would agree, in your case, mission definitely accomplished. Your thesis is not just a scientific achievement, it is work that provides insights that matter to real people, to those live with dementia and their family members who care for them day in and day out. You have explored how acceptance and commitment therapy can contribute to improving their psychological flexibility, and how digital and non-digital tools, when implemented, can reduce isolation and improve connection. Your work gives voice to the psychosocial dimension of dementia care, and in doing so offers concrete ways to improve quality of life. You dedicated your thesis to women in science, and that's not something to take for granted, especially now, in the time when diversity policies are being questioned and the space for different voices in academia can no longer be assumed. Your voice and your success speak volumes. I've heard somewhere in the university corridors that you're also musically talented and that you have ambitions in that area too. Honestly, I would not be surprised. You have a mind that always wants to embrace new challenges, create, explore, express. It's that combination that made you who you are today. So Dr. Atefi, on behalf of the entire promotion team, Frans, Rosalie, Sarah, and myself, I want to say big congratulations, and also congratulations, of course, to your parents, your sisters, your brother, and everyone that matters to you. We're very proud of what you've achieved, and we can't wait to see what you'll do next. And one thing I know for sure, whatever it is, it will probably be surprising.
Esteemed Dr. Atefi, dear Golnaz, it's my great pleasure to congratulate you with your doctorate, and I do that also on behalf of Maastricht University. And I would also like to share some impressions of the committee with you. We have critically written, a thesis of good quality, well written, easy to read, although it was quite extensive and not always easy to keep focus on what people read. But it's not only extensive, but it's also carefully and beautifully designed. And you see not very often this type of very well performed and layouted thesis. Your studies are well performed and well interpreted, and you produced also an impressive list of publications in scientific literature. With respect to your defense, adequate, with well-formulated answers, clear, committed, and conceptual. And you have demonstrated to be very knowledgeable and also to be very well able to perform scientific research. And the committee is very satisfied with your defense. I do not only congratulate you with that result, but also your 4 supervisors, Professor Marjolein de Vught, Professor Frans Verheij, Dr. Rosalie Knippenberg, and Dr. Sarah Bartels. Congratulations with the thesis, the list of publications, and also this excellent defense. Congratulations with that result. I also would like to include in my congratulations your family, your parents, and I think your father is here present, your sisters and other members of the family. Congratulations with the result that you have seen today. And I also would like to congratulate, I think, quite a lot of colleagues and friends and family that have seen you, not only here in the aula, but probably also in the live stream. So I congratulate you all with this result. I would like to thank all members of both committees, both the assessment committee that reads the thesis and judges it. And also I would like to express the gratitude of Maastricht University to the external members of the committee. Professor Rosemarie Dreus and Dr. Mika. Thank you very much for your contribution to the committee and critically reading the manuscript and having, and that's for all the opponents, having a good scientific discussion. Thank you very much. Before I close this academic ceremony, I would like to invite the people here in the audience to go to this session has been ended. You may go to the rafter where you are invited to join the reception, and you find it quite easily if you leave the aula here and you make a turn to the right after the elevator. You will find it easy, and we will take a picture with you in the middle, and I would like to invite your father and sisters to join us to be also on the picture. Hereby I close this academic ceremony at Maastricht University.
Please all rise. Governance, please bring the degree. Supervisors, please come and join. Everybody else can also join. Please bring your plan.
Recording stopped.